Welcome to the Agent of Wealth podcast with Marc Bautis from Bautis Financial. In this podcast, Marc helps guide you towards financial freedom, ensure you never run out of money, and create a balance in life that prioritizes what is most important to you. Join us for this journey as Marc draws from years of expertise and guest experts to solve the multiple wealth building challenges involved in your financial life.
Welcome back to the Agent of Wealth. This is your host, Marc Bautis. On today's show, I brought on a special guest, Rod Khleif. Rod's a multiple business owner and philanthropist who's passionate about real estate, business, and giving back. As one of the country's top business, real estate, and peak performance luminaries, Rod has owned over 2,000 homes and apartment buildings and has built over 24 businesses in his 40-year career, several of which have been worth tens of millions of dollars. Rod's also the host of the #1 real estate podcast, Lifetime Cash Flow Through Real Estate Investing, and the author of the #1 bestseller, How to Create Lifetime Cash Flow Through Multifamily Properties, The New Rules of Real Estate Investing. Rod, welcome to the show.
Hey, Mark, it's great to see you, buddy. Let's have some fun today.
All right. So I'm excited to talk about not just real estate investing, but I know you're also big into mindset, which I think is an important for success. So really looking forward to it. A lot of people think that you need to have a ton of capital saved to get started, or you have to have wealthy friends or family. Your beginnings, I don't think were like that. How'd you get started in real estate?
Sure. Well, I'm going to take you back even further than that, just to give some framework and foundation to the conversation. So I immigrated to this country when I was 6 years old with my brother Albert and my mother's Vansha. I was born in the Netherlands, in Holland, think wooden shoes and windmills. And we ended up in Denver, Colorado, and we struggled. I remember eating expired food because that's all she could afford, powdered milk with our cereal in the morning instead of real milk because, again, that's all she could afford. I wore clothes from the Goodwill and the Salvation Army all the way through junior high school till I was old enough to get a job actually lied about my age to get a job at Burger King when I was 14 and was able to buy my own clothes. But, and I'm sure, other people listening may have had it harder than we did, but I knew I wanted more. And luckily, my mom had an incredible work ethic. So she would babysit kids. We always had a house full of kids. She would babysit kids who would have enough money to eat and live a decent life. And she was a bit of an entrepreneur. And with her babysitting money, she invested in the stock market, did quite well. She also purchased real estate. And the first house she bought was right across the street from us. And she told me when she bought it, she'd paid $30,000. And this is when I was about 14. And when I was 17, she told me she'd made $20,000 in her sleep. And I'm like, what? Screw college. I'm going to do real estate, Mom. So, I got my real estate broker's license right when I turned 18, which you could do back then with education. Now they got smart and you need some experience before you can be a broker. But I was a broker. I could have my own office. And my first year in real estate, I made about $8,000, 8 to 10, something like that. Again, this is 42 years ago. My second year, maybe 10 to 12. But my third year, I made over $100,000, which back in 1981 was really good money. And so what happened between year 2 and 3? And that's what you were just starting to speak to, is I met somebody that taught me about the importance of mindset and psychology and how truly 80 to 90% of your success in anything is just that, your mindset and your psychology. And if it was just knowledge, there'd be a bunch of wealthy librarians and college professors. You actually have to take action. It's the do. Yeah. It's the pushing through fear. It's the pushing through limiting beliefs. Or maybe you're comfortable. And the comfort zone's a warm place, but nothing freaking grows there, right? So it's that you have to take action. It's mindset that causes you to do that. So fast forward to today, I've owned a couple thousand houses that I've rented long term, thousands of apartment units. In 2006, my net worth went up $17 million while I slept. A little more than my mom's $20,000. And if you do the math on that, it's $8,340 an hour, I think, over a 40-hour work week for the year. And of course I did. And I thought I was a real estate god. My head got so big I could barely fit it through a door. When that happens, God or the universe or whatever you believe will give you a nice little smackdown. Well, that was 2008. I lost everything in 2008. I lost $50 million, in fact, conservatively. One of the things I do enjoy talking about, we can take this conversation wherever you like, Mark, but one of the things I do enjoy talking about is the mindset it took to have $50 million to lose in the first place. And then, of course, the mindset it took to get back to the success that I'm blessed to have today. Like we just closed on a 296-unit apartment complex in San Antonio. That's why I've got bags under my eyes, because we just flew in late last night. We were just onboarding the new third-party property management company there. Screaming deal, fantastic deal, actually. But I'm back, but it's all mindset. I teach this to my students, and I started my podcast about 4 years ago, actually a little over 4 years ago. And I now have students all over the country, all over the world, actually. And I'm really proud to say that because of the focus on mindset and taking massive action, my students are approaching 46,000 units owned, which is just astounding to me because I've only been teaching definitely less than 4 years. And like I say, it's primarily mindset. So, happy to drill down on it if you like.
Yeah, maybe let's start from 2008, 2009.
Sure. And it was no fun, let me tell you. I mean, I thought I was set for life. All my property was in Florida, and I thought 80 million baby boomers getting old and getting cold. I thought Florida was recession proof. Well, Florida was ground zero for what happened in 2008. And so how did I bounce back? Well, luckily, I've been in the self-actualization, self-improvement genre for a long time. I followed Tony Robbins around the planet for 20 years. So I was around people that were motivated. I was also in a pretty high level peer group. I was actually in what he calls his platinum partnership. And it's about $120,000 to join that thing for a year. And there were people in there thriving through the crash. So, one of the things I enjoy talking about is just the importance of your peers. You want to be around people that aren't threatened by your dreams and your goals, that aren't going to hold you back because of their fear or their jealousy or whatever, their perceived inadequacies. And so, I was around a group that was thriving, telling me, hey, stop whining, pick your little, whiny butt up and go make stuff happen again. So that was important. But the big thing for me was reassociating with what I wanted and why I wanted it. It's so easy when you're having challenges to focus on the challenges. And focus is such a critical piece of this because whatever you focus on is going to grow larger, both positive or negative. I get people call me and say, how do I get out of this student loan debt? And I say, wrong question. How do you make so much money where the student loan debt's irrelevant? And so, focus is such a critical piece of this. And it's so easy. I could have made that $50 million loss my story. And it's very, very, you have to be very, very, or my identity. And you have to be very, very careful with that. It's a sad reality that as human beings, we actually connect through pain. If you came up to me, Mark, and said, how you doing? And I said, oh my God, I'm fantastic. You'd step back and say, okay, Rod's off his meds. But if you can, maybe not you, you're involved, but most people would. But if you came up to me and said, how you doing? I'm like, oh God, dude, my back is freaking killing me. I haven't been able to sleep. You'd put your arm around me and say, oh, I feel you, brother. And that's how we connect that way. It's just so important to manage your focus. And so I reassociated with what I wanted and why I wanted it. I redid my goals. I associated with my goals. I take this stuff very, very seriously. And some people, super analytical people are like, oh yeah, okay, woo, get pictures of what you want, do your goals, blah, blah, blah. Well, I'm here to tell you, that's how I had 50 million to lose. And that's how I got it back. And so, it does work, whether you believe it or not, it works. And it's such a critical piece of this. The mechanics are the smallest percentage of it. I've got students that just take massive action and they fumble their way through, but they're super successful. They make mistakes. Sure. They have setbacks. We try to minimize those, but it's taking action and pushing through. And like you alluded before we started recording, like Dr. Martin Luther King said, it's that first step. You take that first step in faith and the next step will be revealed. I see it in with my coaching students, that first deal, it's like the law of the first deal. It's the scariest. It's the hardest. It takes the longest. And then, it might take 8 months or even a little longer sometimes to get that deal. Next thing I know, after that, they've got 6 of them. And I'm like, what just happened? And that's a common dynamic. Yeah, but what I do at, my live events, and I was doing virtual events for the last, couple of years. We're supposed to have 800 people in Orlando in May of 20. And of course, we all know what happened with that. And what's great is I'm actually doing my first live event again in Orlando, December 3rd, 4th, and 5th. But the reason I bring that up is the first thing we do is goal setting. Again, people are like, okay, let's get on with the real estate stuff. Well, I'm here to tell you that's more important because that's truly 80, 90% of it. You've got to know exactly what it is you want and more importantly, why you want it. So we spend a lot of time on that. And if you're listening to this and you don't have an interest in real estate, if you go to any one of my social channels and you just ping me, I'm very, very active. Just ping me on any social channel. And I'm on they even got me on TikTok now, but you ping me anywhere and just say, hey, send me your goal setting workshop. I did it on January 2nd of this year with music, with a free guide you can download. And I'll send you the link to that so you can have me walk you through the goals. And it's really a very powerful process. but it's a critical process. You're going to flounder unless you know what you want and why you want it, and then you work into how you're going to accomplish it. That's the first thing we do at my boot camp. So let me just throw a quick plug in. If you are interested in multifamily, just text Rod in Orlando to 72345 or go to rodinorlando.com, and tickets are ridiculously reasonable. It's not a sales pitch. It literally is 3 days of training. And it's a very, very powerful. We go through every aspect of the business, from building your team to finding deals to financing deals, raising money for deals to syndicating, joint venture, property management. And of course, I spend good time on mindset. So people actually take action with what they learn. And it's a pretty awesome experience with music, and it's a very positive thing. So in fact, if you go to the rodinorlando.com website, you'll see hundreds of testimonials. I don't think we've ever gotten a complaint except that the room is too cold. Anyway, but yeah, goal setting is the first thing we do, because you've got to know what you want.
What's an example of a goal? Is it, I want to own 1,000 units?
It could be that. So it needs to be specific, but the critical piece is your mind has to believe you can do it. Because if it's 1,000 units and you're saying to yourself, that's a wish, or maybe it's a yacht or a jet or a private island, and you're thinking, yeah, that's what I want, but your mind really doesn't. You have to believe it. So goals can be anything. They can be financial, and I would tell you with financials, determine how much money you want in 3 years in the bank, like you're just in case the stuff hits the fan fund, how much cash flow you want from your investment, say in 3 years. And then again in 10 years, how much cash you want in the bank, and cash flow in 10 years, from passive or active investing. And then, obviously the stuff, the houses, the cars, the boats, the jet skis, the planes, all that stuff. When we do this, it's everything you could ever possibly want in life. Okay. So it's all the stuff, it's the cash, it's the things you want to do in your lifetime. It's, I've got a friend that's climbing every mountain over 14,000 feet. If you want to write a book, write that down. Everything you want to do, every place you want to go. And then I instruct people to also write down what you want to learn in this lifetime. If you want to learn multifamily investing, for God's sakes, come to my boot camp. I promise you'll be glad you did. I love what I do. I showed you on the wall behind me. I've got hundreds of thank you cards from successful students, and it's why I love what I do. And so it's not about the money. I make more money from buying real estate. Whatever you want to learn, a foreign language, write that down. And then lastly, write down who you want to help, because we'll do more for others than we'll ever do for ourselves. And again, this is the fuel. It's never about the goals. It's about you having something, a target to go after. You need the goals to push you and propel you, but it's never about the goals. Happiness comes from progress and growth. Talk about that as well extensively in my trainings, because you've got to acknowledge that growth. Because are you going to have delays? You bet. Are you going to have setbacks? You bet. I've built 27 businesses. Several, like you said, have been worth tens of millions of dollars. Most, I don't call them failures, by the way. I call them seminars. Most of those 27 businesses were spectacular, flaming seminars. But you learn. It's only a failure if you don't get back up or you don't get the lesson, right? I love the saying about an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur is like a shark. It only dies if it stops swimming. What does Winston Churchill say? Happiness comes from the ability to go from one failure to another without the loss of enthusiasm, or something like that. In fact, I met the billionaire owner of Spanx at a mastermind that I was in, Sarah Blakely, beautiful human being, started with $5,000. Now she's worth a gazillion, $5-6 billion. But she told me her dad used to ask her and her brother on a weekly basis, what have you failed at this week? Isn't that an awesome question to ask your kids? I love that. Don't fear failure. If you're listening to this, and I'm sure you've got a fairly analytical listener base, and I would tell you, you might be operating with some fear, and you might be afraid to take action. I'm going to tell you, or you might be afraid of failure, fearing failure. I'm going to tell you, fear regret, a lot worse than failure. Fear being in the same place a year from now that you are right now, unless you absolutely freaking love where you are right now. Fear regret. And I'm going to tell you why. Or one reason why. I think it's probably fairly obvious, but let me give you kind of a profound example. There was this nurse in Australia. Her name was Bronnie Ware, and she was a hospice nurse. So she, took care of patients when they were about to die. And she asked them a question. And the question mark was, do you have any regrets? She even wrote a book about it. It's called The 5 Regrets of Dying. You know what the number one regret was? It was not living the life I could have lived, living someone else's life, not doing what I know I'm capable of. I can't think of anything worse than that. So again, doing these goals and getting aligned on what you want and visualizing as well. Visualization is also super important. There's a reason Olympic athletes are now trained to visualize a race before they do it, because it's been proven to enhance performance. What the goals do is they trigger something in your brain called your reticular activating system. And that is a subconscious filter. You're not aware of it. It's subconscious that points you your brain points you in the direction it thinks you're interested in. And the greatest example of it is when you first buy a car. You never really notice them, and you buy the car and they're everywhere, right? And were they there before? Of course they were. Now you're noticing them. And it's the same thing with your goals. So if you write your goals down and you associate with them regularly,
Right.
your brain's going to turn you in the direction of things you need to do and see and participate in to accomplish those goals. And guys, and I know, again, I've probably lost a few of you and you were sitting, let's get into the real estate. Well, this is more important. Trust me. Okay. It doesn't matter what the vehicle is. You get this down and you will be a success. Doesn't matter what you choose, entrepreneurship, franchises, investing in the market, mutual funds like you do, whatever. If the mindset is the critical piece here. If you're a trader or real estate, of course. That's why, I spend a good amount of time on that. Also really being clear on what your identity is as a human being. And, because anything you put the words I am in front of is an identity statement. So like on my wall here, I've got signs that say I am success. I am the best in the world at what I do. I'm a business genius. Now, again, this is not ego. This is what I'm aspiring to be. These are aspirations, but the I am word the preframe is incredibly important. People will die over their identity and use that force to create what it is that you want in life. And again, visualization's huge. I can give you some great examples of that. Jim Carrey, when he was flat broke, wrote himself a check for $10 million. And if you Google Jim Carrey check, you'll see it. For those of you millennials, that check is something we used to use to pay for things. But anyway, he wrote himself the check. He'd go up by the Hollywood sign. He'd look at it and visualize cashing it. That's how much money he made for Dumb and Dumber. A more recent example, Demi Lovato. When she was unknown, posted on social media, one day I'm going to sing in the Super Bowl. Not this last one, the one before. Go see who sang the national anthem in the Super Bowl. It was her. I've got lots of personal examples, car examples, things like that I got it through visualization. I've got vision boards on the ground behind me here for things that I want. Recognize the value of this if you're listening, because I'm just telling you, this is probably the most important piece if for whatever you want, even if it's relationship. If you don't have a relationship, get pictures I got pictures before I'd met my incredibly beautiful on the inside and outside, stunningly beautiful on the outside wife. But I got pictures of the emotion that I was looking for in a relationship where couples were looking at each other with incredible love. And, and I manifested her in my life. So there's so many things, whatever it is you want to bring it into your life, get pictures of it. Go on Google and look for pictures that might be something like what it is you're looking for. It doesn't have to be exact, but when you see the picture, like you stir it a little bit, download them, go to CVS, Walgreens, have them blown up. That's how I did it. That's how I recovered, Mark. Long answer to your question, but that's how I recovered, was focusing on what I wanted and why I wanted it. And that's the other thing we do in the goals. Sorry, let me add that. It is critical to know why you want the goal, because it's the why that'll drive you. So I instruct people to write down their whys and use emotionally charged words, words like amazing and beautiful and incredible when they're writing a description of why they want a particular goal, because so I can show my kids what amazing success looks like. So I can show my wife what it means to live an amazing life of abundance or whatever, just juicy words that will move you. Words are so powerful. So you use those. And then I also tell them to put some pain in there if you don't achieve the goals. Like I said, so I don't live a life of regret. So I don't feel like a failure. So I don't fail my kids, so I don't fail my spouse, because the pain, again, we'll do more as human beings to avoid pain than gain pleasure. And you want to use that as well to drive you. So the whys are very important as well.
Yeah, I'm a proponent of the visualization as well. And it's something we do with people we work with. We do it from a little bit of different framework in that we call it the advice value stack. So we start at the bottom and, there's managing money and there's, do I have enough for retirement? And, that's all good stuff to know and to do.
Sure.
But then you want to get up the stack. You want to look at, all right, what does doing some of this bring? Does it bring peace of mind? Does it bring happiness? But then you really want to get up to the top, which is fulfillment, or why, like you mentioned, why are you doing this? Why is this important?
Well, hopefully at the very top, it's contribution, because let me share a story with you because it ties right into what you just said. I love that you do that. That is so a holistic approach to what it is you do. I love it. Love hearing that. When I was 18, as it relates to goals, I lived in Denver, but I knew I wanted to live on the beach. And of course, there's no beach in Denver, but I would visualize the palm trees and the surf and the sand and all of that for 20 years. 20 years later, I built this $8 million 10,000 square foot mansion on the beach. I had the beach on one side. It was called a Gulf to Bay. So I owned the bay side as well. So I had my boat lifts on the backside and had the beach on the other side. And that was unthinkable when I was 18. But again, there's a power of visualization. I would visualize it and I made it happen. 3 months after I moved in, I'm floating in the pool at night. I worked for this thing for 20 years. And I'm looking up at this 10,000 square foot testament to my ego, which is really what it was. It was to prove the world I was good enough. And when I looked, when I dissected it, that was the truth of it. I look up at this thing and I got depressed. And I don't mean just a little bummed. I mean really bummed. And I'm like, what the hell? I've just achieved success. I had the Mercedes in the garage, the Maserati, all this other stupid stuff. And I had, by societal standards, achieved incredible success. And I was really bummed. And so I went out and bought some books, because I'm not going to go lay on a couch, although I believe in therapy. But at that time, I didn't, but I do now. But I went out and got, Napoleon Hill and Zig Ziglar back then. And I got a Tony Robbins book, which I got halfway through. And I'm like, man, I really like this guy. And so I went and saw him. This is 20 plus years ago, 21, 22 years ago. And saw that he fed families for the holidays. And I'm like, what a concept, do something for someone else. Because I'd been totally focused on me. And so there were several things going on back then when I was depressed. So let me talk about those real quick. One of them was you should never achieve a big goal without having other goals lined up behind it. Like the good book says, without a vision, the people perish. You need a vision for the future. And I didn't know what I was going to do next. So that's number one. Second thing we talked about earlier, it's never about the goals. Happiness comes from progress and growth. And I didn't know what I was going to do next. And you've got to acknowledge that progress, even a little bit, just a little bit. Every week you should look back at the previous week and say, okay, good job. You did that. Even it's a minor thing. So it's about progress and growth. But the big thing was I've been totally focused on myself. Prove the world I matter, prove the world I'm good enough, Rod. And like I said, I went and saw Tony, saw that he fed families for the holidays. He's fed millions. I'm like, you know what? I like that. So I flew to Denver. It was for Thanksgiving. And I told my brother, let's go feed 5 families. And so we went to his church, found 5 families that really needed help. The third one changed my life. We go up to this row house. It was like not even a 1-bedroom. It was a crappy 1-bedroom because you had to walk through the bedroom to get to the kitchen. There's a woman in there, Latin woman, with 5 kids. And she comes out, we had big boxes of food. We had toys for the kids because we knew she had kids. And she starts crying when she sees all this stuff on the porch, frozen turkey for Thanksgiving and the roasting pan. We assumed she didn't have one, everything. She starts crying when she sees all this stuff. And then her kids come out, the older ones start crying. And I start crying. And I'm hooked. And I'm blessed, Mark, to say that we have now fed well over 100,000 kids over the last 21 years here in Sarasota and Manatee County, where I live, in Hillsborough County as well. We've done tens of thousands of backpacks filled with school supplies to local kids. So we've done tens of thousands of teddy bears to local police departments for their officers to keep in their vehicles when they encounter a child that's been, traumatized in a traumatic experience. And please know this, guys, those of you listening, I'm not saying this to brag, but what I'm saying is we were talking about that hierarchy that Mark tells his clients. And I think the ultimate really is contribution, because everything in this universe was meant to contribute. And see, I was successful, but I was unfulfilled. Tony Robbins calls it the science of achievement versus the art of fulfillment, because fulfillment really is an art. As human beings in this society, we've been taught to achieve to be happy. I'm going to tell you, when you're giving back, even in a little way, you're happily achieving. Big difference. And you're going to get the success much faster. You don't do it for that reason, but you do. It's just the way God of the universe works. Whatever you give, you get back tenfold, 100-fold. And so I'm going to encourage you, those of you listening, even if you're thinking, yeah, I'll do it when I have money. No, do it now. Pick a cause. Kids, the elderly, the environment, animals, whatever it is that juices you, and do something, even regardless of how small. It can just be your time, because then you'll be happily achieving. You're going to get there faster. You'll be happier on the path. Just trust me on this. It absolutely is probably one of the most important pieces of all of this.
Yeah, I think it's important. I think the affirmation that you mentioned, that I am, that's important as well. Goal setting is obviously important too. How do you then translate that into, okay, these are the things I should be focusing on?
Once you've got your goals, then you really need to kind of look at what you need to do every month to achieve them, every week to achieve them, every day to achieve them. And you put timelines on. Don't say, I'm going to lose some weight. Say, I'm going to lose 10 pounds by January 1st. And feel great about it. That's a goal. That's specific and measurable. And you've got to do that with your financial goals as well. So you've got to put time limits and assess what they're going to cost and back into them. I need to make 30 calls a week or whatever it is to get to 10 appointments, to get to one deal or whatever. You back into it once you've, established some metrics, or you guess at them until you've got them. And that's really, for those of you that need that sequential analytical analysis of how you approach this, take it to that level. But the key is you've got to plan. You fail to plan to fail. I mean, you've got to plan. You've got to determine how you're going to do it. You've got to pick your vehicle. I would encourage you to pick a vehicle you enjoy. I tell my students that have paid tens of thousands of dollars to work with me that you if you don't love multifamily real estate, then you better learn to love it. Okay, you associate pleasure with it. I believe you can learn to love anything if you can associate pleasure with it, including working out. The point is, if you can't learn to love it, then for God's sakes, go do something else. Life is too short for regret. And so get the mindset right, figure out what it is you want, why you want it, with clarity, with precision, get pictures of it, associate with it, write those goals regularly so it continues to trigger your reticular activating system. Then make sure you find a vehicle that you enjoy or can learn to enjoy, and success is inevitable, period. You build your competence first, that builds your confidence, and then you have the ability to influence. But it's got to go through that trajectory, competence to confidence to ability to influence. For you to do any business, very often you're going to need to raise money, or you're going to need to, influence people, build a team, do things, for you to be a success in anything involves influence. And so the other thing is, if you love what it is you're doing, you're going to have passion. And passion influences. People want to be around people that are passionate about what they're doing, that enjoy it. Like Marc, with you, you're obvious you enjoy what you're doing. You've taken the time to lay out, that trajectory or hierarchy of needs. Kind of sounds a little bit like Maslow in a way, but it's obvious you wouldn't do that unless you really enjoy what you do. And people feel that. And when they feel that, they want to work with you. They're influenced by your passion. And so again, the love of it is super important. Doesn't matter what the vehicle is. You just need to really enjoy it. And then people will feel that, and they'll want to work with you. They'll want to invest with you. They'll want to be around you.
Yeah. I know you talk a lot about multifamily. A lot of your podcasts talk about it, your books about it. Boot camp. Why multifamily?
Well, I've owned 2,000 houses that I rented long term. In 2008, when I lost everything, it was my houses that pulled me down. I had 800 houses along the Gulf Coast of Florida, and I had several apartment complexes. And here's what happened. I was 2 hours north of me and 2 hours south of me and everywhere in between. Logistically not good for houses, okay? Now, if your houses are very tightly geographically located, it's okay, but still, it's the same amount of work to buy a house as it is to buy a 20 unit. And so if you want scale, and it's much easier to raise money for a commercial multifamily property. But here's what happened in 2008. So my houses were all up and down the coast here. Florida has no state income tax. So property taxes are higher, which impacts what? Cash flow, right? You mentioned the subtitle of my book, The New Rules of Real Estate Investing. The new rules are forget value, focus on cash flow, okay? The taxes impacted my cash flow. I had houses in wind and flood zones, so the insurance is higher, impacts cash flow. But the thing that killed me is if I sent a maintenance guy to one of my apartment complexes, everything's the same. HVAC is the same, the plumbing parts are the same, the locks are the same, windows, so you can stockpile parts. And I could send a guy there and he's in and out in an hour fixing something. Well, if I had to send him to a house that's an hour and a half away one way, I have to get there, see what's wrong, then have to go find a Home Depot or a Lowe's where we have an account. That could be an hour round trip. And what took an hour at one of my apartments took all day at one of my 800 C-class houses. These were C-class, much more maintenance on C-class assets. It was A, B, C, and D class. D is the hood. These were C. But there's a lot more maintenance. It's a tougher demographic. They're harder on the properties. And so, that killed me. But then the coup de grace, as it were, was and I didn't pay attention to demographics back then. I just wasn't that sophisticated. And most of my tenants were contractors, plumbers, electricians, drywallers, painters, roofers, which fell off a freaking cliff in 08 and 09. So they didn't have work. It was just like the perfect storm for me. And here's what's crazy, Marc. I was at a 30% loan to value at the end of 2006. My portfolio only owed 30 cents on a dollar. I still crashed and burned. It didn't cash flow. And then what's really crazy is it actually went upside down. The value of my property plummeted more than 70%. It's a little over 70%, which is just almost unthinkable. But that's what happened in that crash. It was painful. It was no fun. It sucked. But, I focused on what I wanted. I reassociated with my goals and here I am.
You mentioned something about cash flow, and I'm a proponent of cash flow too, because in the real estate transaction, it's really the one thing you can control. You can project it, you can map it out. But what I've seen, especially over the past 5 years, with everything going on in the economy, with low interest rates, it's harder to find things that look like they work cash flow wise. However, the asset values have just been inflating to the point where.
Yeah, well, let me tell you something. Rents are going up too, buddy. I will tell you, we have that asset in San Antonio, and we're still raising for it. By the time this episode airs, I could still be raising some money for it. So let me tell you about that deal. Now, I'm blessed to have 700 active, 1,000 total students in the country. So I get deals thrown at me from all over the country. And we looked at 300 deals to find this. So yeah, they're harder to find, but they are out there. To give you an example of this particular deal, we closed on it 3 days ago, and it breaks even right now before we do anything at 41 or 42% vacant, which is unheard of in this hot market. It's 96% occupied right now. We could sustain it at 58, 59% economically occupied, again, which is unheard of. Most of the syndications are being done right now. The operators have to do a 70-30 split or an 80-20 split to make the numbers work and the returns work for their investors. This deal is 50-50, and we still have a 10 to 12% cash on cash, 15+% IRR, and we are being extremely conservative. And everybody says that, but we really are. They're out there, Mark. They're harder to find right now. The market is frothing. But I will tell you right now, we're looking at a couple of other deals that look very interesting. So, and now we only deal with accredited investors. So if you're listening and you're accredited and you want to chat with us about a deal, you text the word partner to 72345 and we'll chat about it. Again, that's partner to 72345. But, yes, they are harder to find. I will tell you, there's some dumb stuff happening right now. There are deals where we're in what's called best and final, where they're asking the people with the highest offers to come in with their best, kind of like an auction process. That's how they're doing it a lot now. And when we see what some of these properties are selling for, we're scratching our head. It's like, do they have no cost of funds, or are they just lying to their investors because there's just no way the numbers work? And so, I think there could be some reckoning happening. Some of these people using bridge debt, which is the commercial real estate equivalent of hard equity or hard money loans from the single family space. It's kind of like the wild, wild west. And I think there's going to be some pain for some of these operators, but there's irrational exuberance. This feels a little bit like 2006 to me. I'm going to be honest. Now, I don't think the situation is much different, or everything's much different, but the one good thing, Mark, about what it is that I do is inflation helps us, okay? Rents go up too. And in fact, in that San Antonio deal, the rents went up 18% in the last 12 months. 18%. I mean, we typically do 2 to 3% rent bumps. It went up 18%. It's just incredible. With this administration throwing trillions more dollars at this economy, which I think is freaking nuts, but inflation is just going to get worse. And so negatively impacts just about everything except cash flowing real estate, because your mortgages are usually locked for a period of time where your rents will continue to go up. And that's my 2 cents on that. I did a YouTube video because I had Harry Dent on my show, the economist Harry Dent, and Peter Schiff, and they're doom and gloom and saying the crash is imminent. And so I did a YouTube video, the coming real estate crash of 2021. I got 100,000 views. I'm like, holy cow. People love negative news. And a lot of people are like, you're an idiot, you're a moron. And in the comments, but I was wrong. And I've been through some of these cycles. I've been through 3 of them now. And I think the writing's on the wall. Something's got to give here. There's going to be a catalyst, something, could be this China thing that's happening while we're talking. There are big developers, billion-dollar development companies going bankrupt or losing most of their market share in China. And that could be a catalyst. Who knows what the catalyst is going to be? COVID didn't do it. We thought COVID was going to do it, but it didn't. So who knows what it's going to be, but I think something's going to happen here before too long. And those of you listening, thinking about getting into real estate, don't let that be a fear factor for you, because it's a great time to learn. If you listen to my podcast, you start to hear a pattern. Most of them started, ones with 5,000 or more units started in 9, 10, 11, and 12. With crisis comes opportunity. If there's a contraction, it's not something to fear. It's something to just be aware of. I got crushed by the wave in 2008 and 9. This time I'm surfing that thing, okay, because I'm ready for it.
What's the natural progression if someone wants to get involved in multifamily real estate investing?
Yeah, well, you've got to learn. You've got to learn it, okay? Don't dabble, especially if you're going to take other people's money. The beautiful thing about multifamily is you can raise money for these deals. There's so much money looking for deals right now, but you've got to learn it. So come spend 3 days with me or listen to my podcast to start. I host the largest multifamily Facebook group in the world. There's almost 43,000 people in there. We don't allow any promotion, just education in there as well. If you go to multifamilycommunity.com, it's a direct link to that. Follow me on any social channel, and there's tons of videos that I throw out there, articles. I got a stack here, a foot thick of books that I've written, about every aspect of this business I give away for free on social posts and stuff. So just learn. Don't dabble. Dabblers get crushed. If you're going to do this, get into it, learn to love it. I've got so many students that have retired from incredibly high-paying W-2 jobs. I mean, like multiple 6-figure jobs because of the income they've created through multifamily investing, both passively and actively. And, it's my greatest gift in life.
Do you see that person? Because I think I come across that person a lot, who has a W-2 job, making good money, kind of addicted to that money, yet they want to get out. They're not necessarily happy. How do they do it? Do they go cold turkey?
No. I get that call all the time. Should I quit my job and do this? Absolutely not. Here's why. Because if you don't have income coming in, fear could pop up, and fear paralyzes. And most of these people, in fact, all of them that I was just thinking about that have quit their jobs, did it after they built that income up. They did it on the side. They did it with families, with kids, and so on and so forth. So absolutely do not quit your job. You need to feel like, you need to not have fear come in, because fear will totally rob you of your motivation and paralyze you.
Give you a chance to plug anything you want.
If you want to come see me, Rod in Orlando, text that to 72345, or just go to realestatewithrod.com. That's a direct link to my website. My name's Rod Khleif, but nobody can spell it. If you go to Real Estate with Rod, I've got tons of free stuff there, books and articles and videos, and it's all free. My podcast is Lifetime Cash Flow Podcast. Again, if you put real estate in your iPhone, I usually come up in the top 3. I'm blessed to say we've got the largest commercial real estate podcast out there. And it's because I love what I do. Again, it's that passion, and it comes out. And that's why we talked about that. So important. If you're going to do this, love it, and success is inevitable.
Awesome. Thanks, Rod, for being on the show. Really appreciate your insight and your passion too. It's definitely
thanks,
impressive.
Brother.
So we'll link to all that in the show notes. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in to today's episode.
Thank you for listening to the Agent of Wealth podcast. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered represents the views and opinions of the guests and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Bautis Financial. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only and is not intended to be a substitute for professional financial planning and investment advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your investments and financial planning.